Welcome to the More Perfect Union, the podcast that offers real debate without the hate. I'm Kevin Kelton, along with my good friends Greg Matusak.
Kevin, I can't tell you, I really took those COVID lunatics for a ride. I invested in horsehair detangler. I'm pretty sure that was what we were supposed to invest in, detangler, wasn't it?
No, dewormer.
Oh, shit! I screwed it up again.
I told you, it's the character from Animal House, Dean Wormer.
Oh. Does anyone need a horsehair detangler? I've got like boxes of it now. Oh shit.
And of course, also with us as always is our good friend and gold record winner, Ward Anderson.
Thank you, gentlemen. The Tim Matheson of the More Perfect Union podcast.
Not a bad place to be.
That's not bad.
Just trying to be the voice of reason. So you went with the Dean Wormer approach in this whole thing, and all I did was blow Stephen Bishop. That's how I thought I was going to be cured of COVID, but apparently that's not the way. Does anybody get that? Does anybody get that reference?
Well, I know that Stephen Bishop is in the movie. He sang On, and he's the guy on the staircase. In fact, I was just telling Jess about this like 2 weeks ago. We were listening to On in the radio,
yep.
And I asked her if she remembered him in Animal House, and then I told her the exact scene and what happened, and her reaction was, okay, sure, whatever.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Just for that, we are going to get Stephen Bishop on this show.
So, hey, everybody, welcome back to the, I think, 7th year of the More Perfect Union. We started doing this, the original cast, which was Greg and I and DJ and Alan and Jonah.
Yeah.
We started doing this in either late August or early September of 2015.
Oh, my gosh, I'm so old. I was only 14.
Yeah, that's right. And you still had the beard.
I know.
This is our 321st episode. And that's a lot of shows. And we've been doing it pretty much every week. You know, occasionally, somebody would get sick or somebody would have a business responsibility and they would take off. But Greg and I have been here pretty much every week for 6 straight years. Ward joined us this past year, much earlier in the year, and you've been here pretty much every week. And we decided to take a couple of weeks off just to catch our breath, live our lives, reacquaint ourselves with our families, and
go to rehab.
Whatever families we still have. And guys, I had a wonderful time. I traveled back to California for the first time in a very long time. Went to the Northern California area, Mendocino, where Jess's parents live. They have a fabulous home overlooking the Pacific Ocean. And we just had a wonderful week with them and some other family friends. And we were also in San Francisco for a few days. And other than that, we've just been here in Texas doing the typical things, which is barbecues, hanging out with neighbors, and writing horrible laws. That's pretty much what we've been busy with. What about you?
To be quite honest, I spent most of the month of August working at my day job. But when I wasn't doing that, what's really nice about this show is I spend most of my not time working watching TV news on like 7 different channels, which my family loves. So I took a break for a couple weeks not watching, and I got to actually watch some TV shows. I finished, I rewatched The Venture Brothers.
Never heard of it.
You've never heard of The Venture Brothers?
It's an animated series.
It's so good. I finished watching, what was the other one I watched? Watchmen from HBO.
Excellent series.
Excellent series. And, so I did a lot of that sort of stuff. These series that I haven't seen or finished, that was kind of awesome. Oh, and I spent time with my wife and kids.
Good. And Ward, I know that you've been, as always, busy on all of your projects, your animation. I know you've got a new project that you're working on with Matt Dusk. Mm-hmm. How was your summer?
I had sex with Stephen Bishop.
Congratulations. Did it go on and on?
You know what? I'm always keeping busy. Those who know me know I don't like idle hands. So I am working on several projects, and Kevin and Greg both know about it, but a deal I was working on for quite some time went through, and I will be going to Georgia in November and December in just a couple of months to film a movie that I co-wrote and am producing that is finally moving forward after a long pre-production period thanks to COVID-19.
What's the working title on that one?
Killing Time.
Killing Time?
Or Killing Time. That's the neat thing about it is you could actually say the title any way that you want because depending on how you say it could reveal the plot. So that's going to be going on. I've really been enjoying that. And yes, of course, jazz pop extraordinaire Matt Dusk and I worked together a good bit. And I just wrote and produced a PBS special for him, which will be airing within, I don't know, the next 6 months or whatever.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great.
Thank you very much.
Guys, it is so nice to be back with you.
Did you guys know that PBS is still a thing, by the way? I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Of course. And this is why I do not go to Hollywood parties with either of you two guys. Well, I am putting out
no one from PBS is there?
I'm going to, and I'm like, I watched some TV. You guys suck.
Well, before we get into what's been happening in the world since we've been on last, I wanted to talk to the audience. We wanted to talk to the audience about the show going forward. And we're not going to stretch this out longer than need be. But we want to prepare our regular listeners for the fact that we're going to continue doing the show, but you may not be getting an episode every single Monday of every week going forward. We've decided that instead of being tied to a strict schedule of coming out on the same day every week, weekly, we're going to do this more, for lack of a better word, casually, maybe haphazardly. But we've decided to do podcasts when we feel like it, when we feel that there's content there that we're excited to cover, as opposed to having a deadline and having to fill it with stories that maybe we really don't have as fresh a take on. This week, there's a lot in the news, but sometimes there hasn't been that much in the news to really generate a full episode every single week. So I'm going to throw to you guys and let you comment on this, but I know it's going to make my life, as much as I love the podcast, a little bit easier because having to do all of the post-production as well as these recording sessions had become a little bit of a little too much of a routine for me. And Greg, you need more time to for beard grooming, I think.
Obviously, and to obviously watch more TV because while you guys are making movies.
You know what? We can also say it. I'll say it too. Yes, it is more boring with Biden than it was with Trump, but that's okay.
Oh my gosh.
That's a good thing.
That's a good thing.
You know, it just means that there's not bullshit filler for us to throw out at you every week.
The other thing, I'm starting to get suspicious. People like Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Tony Blinken, Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, I'm starting to suspect that they're not listening to every episode. and so I'm not sure that we're really having that effect on the national discourse that we thought we were having. But anyways, let's get into it. Me being the new representative, not representative in Congress, but representative on this show from Texas, I guess I have to be here and defend my state against this new abortion bill that, frankly, is one of the worst things I've ever heard of.
And we should start by prefacing this to the listeners who will ask. We did try to get some women on the show that we could talk to about this week, and people weren't available because it is a holiday weekend and things like that. Okay, so we get it. We are going to be 3 more white men talking about abortion. We get that, but we did try to get some women on the show to talk about this. So,
and I like to think that we're pretty open-minded and we're on the right side of this. It's not like we're white men who are going to say, "What's the big problem? They got 6 weeks."
No, all three of us are pro-choice and against this new Texas law.
Right.
Yeah.
In fact, most of the country is against this new Texas law. The other thing is, it's not a new Texas law. The reason it's in the news is the Supreme Court upheld this new Texas law, or refused
They
to
did
hear
not
it.
stay it. Yes.
Okay, they did not uphold it. They refused to address it.
They refused to address it. So this is why...
Until they hear it, yeah.
Until they hear it. So this is why it's gotten most of the attention, because most people thought it would be thrown out. This is a law that 85 to 90% of women don't even know they're pregnant until the 6 weeks. That's when the majority of abortions actually happen, is after 6 weeks. You are fundamentally taking that right away from them.
And then the other thing, not just your more traditional situation, but those occurrences, for instance, if a minor, a 17-year-old gets pregnant, well, in the state of Texas, they need their parents' permission to get an abortion. So even if that 16-year-old or that 17-year-old knew 2 weeks in that they were pregnant, they have to go through a legal process if their parents are fighting them, and that could take up another 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks. So that could stop them from being able to get an abortion in the state of Texas.
The easiest way to define this law, for anyone who doesn't know everything that's in it, ready? Imagine everything you could do to women to put the responsibility on them, shame on them, keep it technically legal while making it all but illegal, while making it shameful, while trying to guilt women, while trying to publicly out women for having abortions.
And trying to financially bankrupt them.
And trying to financially bankrupt people. It is literally, think of what you could do to keep abortion technically legal while making it nearly impossible to get and making everyone feel as horrible and shameful and awful as possible in the process. And that is what they did. They went, we're going to make it to where you hate everything so much, you have no choice but to have a child that you don't want to have.
Yeah, the other thing is there are no exclusions for rape or incest at any point. That's horrible. These decisions should be handled between doctor and patient, period.
One night this past week, I was up late. I had a little insomnia, was thinking about the law, and I said, I'm going to go find the text of it and read it to kind of try to get a handle on what they did. And in reading this thing, I got to tell you, the actual law is even worse than what you've been hearing in the news. There was some elements of it. For instance, this. As you know, if I suspect that you were involved in an abortion, aiding and abetting is the wording, I could sue you, and if I prevail, I can not only get damages, but you have to pay my legal costs. But if I sue you falsely under the wrong pretenses and the case is ruled in your favor, you can't get legal costs from me. It only goes one way. So anyone can sue you. You have to defend yourself, even if you've done nothing wrong. What if my neighbor thinks I was involved in driving someone to a clinic? They start the lawsuit. I have to defend against it, even though I didn't do it. And I still have to pay my legal costs.
They can do it just to inconvenience you.
Inconvenience and to bankrupt. Well, not bankrupt, but to create financial hardship.
When people talk about misogyny, and people will say, we overuse that word misogyny. I don't hate women. I don't blah, blah, blah. Let me just tell you, this is the most apt use of that word. It is a misogynistic law. It is vicious. It is mean-spirited. It is the closest I've ever seen to a law that generally just says, fuck you bitches. I mean, that is literally, it's an angry law. Like you read it, like Kevin said, if you read it, you'll go, Jesus, you guys are taking this shit personally.
That's the experience I had, Ward. You're exactly right. And let me tell you another thing that was in there that gave me that feeling. Everybody knows that the Supreme Court could have stayed the law, and they chose not to, right? A 5-4 decision. But let's say they had stayed the law temporarily while it worked its way through the judicial system. And Planned Parenthood and other organizations that generally provide abortions in the state of Texas went back to doing what they were doing because the law had been stayed temporarily, right? Now let's say it goes through the courts and the law is upheld. In that situation, anyone who committed an abortion during that time would have been retroactively guilty of breaking the law. Retroactively. Even if at the time that they did it, it was legal.
That's the cake and eat it too clause.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And it's chock full of stuff like that. Chock full of it. And they wrote this thing in such a way, they put in clauses that are so freaking one-sided. Now, I'm not an attorney, but to the extent that I understood them, you go, oh my God, this isn't just about abortion. This is about, as Ward said, shaming people, humiliating people, inconveniencing people, and you know, it's not just sticking the knife in, but it's twisting it 50 times.
Well, and like you said, people haven't read the law. The truth of this is, I've said, you read the Patriot Act. Remember the Patriot Act? And a lot of us were like shocked at parts of it. The Patriot Act shocked you, but it also made you go, okay, this is a reaction to 9/11, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not kidding. If you read this law, like Kevin just said, you'll get angry because you'll just be, I can't believe anybody doesn't see that this is an emotional FU. This is a mean-spirited, cruel law that is done to really hurt people and make them feel hurt.
Yeah, let me get Greg in here.
Okay, so a couple things. One, this is not just an overnight thing. I'm going to disagree a little with you. This has been in the works for years, and the Republican Party has been planning this by getting people elected and working very hard, and they've done this very well on working on statewide elections and state senates and state representatives for a number of years, especially in Texas. And this was the testing ground, whether we see it or not, you know, to see how this would work. Abortion, of course, is probably the number one wedge issue. The question is, how will the rest of America react? This is by far the most, like you all have been saying, draconian result. Will states like Michigan or Pennsylvania or Florida or Arizona, I mean, we could see, I mean, would they react the same as far as how draconian it is? A lot of people in those states would be fine with no abortion, but would they be fine with, no incest or no rape laws, the 6 to 8 week ruling? All those things are even too far for the people in the middle who might side with no abortion.
Yeah, I suspect this is going to be a template for those states.
7 states have already started putting together the same law in their states. 7 different states, okay? What state, my friends, is most likely to go next? Do you guys know? Which state is the closest to getting there fastest and doing it soonest?
Ohio?
Ohio. Your state. Yes.
That's where I was going with that.
Ohio
actually
is not only on track to do it, they'll probably be the next state to do it. And what I find hilarious about this is, not hilarious, but what I find a little ironic about this is, as we have discussed on this show before, the Republicans do not have any policies right now. They only have cultural wars and saying no, opposing everything progressives want. And progressives, I mean anyone that's not Republican, right? That can include Democrats. Anything moving forward, they oppose, they oppose, they oppose. If you think about it, Republicans haven't talked about anything but cultural issues for a long time, right? And honestly, I think this will backfire. You can only watch a minority party enact cruel legislation in opposition to the other side for so long before it backfires. And I really do think that this will ultimately backfire for Republicans. I think they're smug and they think that they've kind of created this foolproof thing that even if it gets shot down by the Supreme Court, they'll be okay. But I think it's actually going to invigorate people who were sitting on the sidelines. And we always talk about those people, the undecided voters or the young voters that don't vote or stick it out. I think it's this kind of thing. It's not just doing this, but doing this and smugly, proudly doing it that tends to backfire when you go at such issues.
Well, time will tell. I want to jump in here and speak to my personal reaction this week to the fact that Texas as a state has now become the focus of ire of anyone who's not a right-wing conservative. And we've all seen it on social media, all the FU Texas stuff, people who live here. I've been experiencing this and hearing it from my friends who are left of center voters, that the animosity that is being, targeted at us for living in Texas, even though we didn't vote for any of these people. I didn't vote for Abbott. I wouldn't have voted for this legislature. But just because we live in Texas, we're being villainized with everyone else. And I want to speak to that for a second, because as bad as this law is, and I think that we made it very clear that none of us here think very much of it, Texas is simply a test case, one of several, if not many, test cases that are going to be in front of the Supreme Court in the next year or so to see whether the Supreme Court will overturn Roe versus Wade. If it hadn't been Texas that was able to skirt the stay order, it would have been another state and another version of this. But to be angry at Texas because you think we're the ones that are costing the country abortion. I'm going to get on my soapbox here. Actually, it's an apple crate, but they double as the same thing. I've been saying this since November 8th, 2016. That's the day we lost Roe versus Wade. It didn't happen last week when Greg Abbott signed that bill. It didn't happen when Amy Coney Barrett became the appointee to the Supreme Court, although that certainly was a nail in the coffin. This started when Democrats and independents, and especially liberal Democrats who supported Bernie Sanders, threw away their fucking votes in 2016. And you will never convince me that those people that voted for Jill Stein or voted for some other third-party candidate, or even worse, stayed home or voted but didn't vote top of the ticket, and there were 80,000 of those just in the Detroit area alone. Democrats who voted down ticket blue and didn't vote for a presidential candidate in a state that we lost by 10,500 votes. Those people, you, if you're listening to me and you were a Sanders supporter and you couldn't pull the lever, so to speak, euphemistically, you couldn't pull the lever for Hillary Clinton. Or if you did hold your nose and vote for her, but in the 5 months leading up to the election, you spent almost every day on Facebook ruining her reputation, calling her a corporate shill, calling her all of the names that we remember from the 2016 campaign, blaming her for things that were never her fault, projecting onto her policies that she did not represent, saying that she wasn't a liberal Democrat when the other side was saying she's way too liberal. If you're one of those people, you today are the reason that we're about to lose Roe versus Wade. Not because of Greg Abbott, not because of Kevin Kelton, not because of Amy Coney Barrett. It's because you thought that you were smarter, had to protest that you didn't get the candidate that you wanted. You folks are the reason this generation coming out of college now will grow up for 30 years or more, possibly not having legal abortions in this country or having it being adjudicated on a state-by-state basis.
I wish at this point I could say, Kevin, I want to disagree with you, but I can't. So
what's to disagree with? And I still see them. I make these comments on Facebook, and the Bernie people come out and they go, oh, well, you can't prove, or the Jill Stein voters, you can't prove that we cost her the election. It's been proven in numbers.
It's called basic math.
It's called basic math.
It is. It is called basic math. And There's one thing that whether you're a Sanders fan or were a Sanders fan, still are Sanders, whatever, whether you love, hate Clinton and everything like that, there's one thing that this has shown. We always let Republicans, we always let conservatives control the narrative. We always let them. Yeah. They're the minority, and yet we let them control the narrative. And we got to stop letting them control the narrative. The biggest reason everybody despised Hillary Clinton is because we let conservatives control the narrative. That is exactly why it is. If you actually
bought into their narrative, and we told them, we said, you are repeating the Karl Rove talking points, and they still did it. Let's move on because we are really running late in the podcast, and I want to cover some other things. Afghanistan, the pullout obviously was in the news. I don't know whether you guys had a chance to catch my podcast last week where I kind of solo went through what I think was the reality of the pullout, which is very different from the media narrative we've been hearing. What was your take on everything that went down?
Well, the one thing that has gotten to me about this whole thing is you're talking about, again, the longest war that America's ever been in. Okay. I really hate, and I would have hated this, by the way, if it had been Trump in office. And I'm going to be legit when I say that. Believe it or not, as much as I despise Trump, I did not criticize literally every single thing he did, right? There were the occasional things that he did right for whatever reason. You know, a broken clock is right twice a day. But there were plenty of times when I would go, okay, yeah, sure. There's rarely been any person I disagreed with on every single thing all the time, always, right? But this idea that somehow Biden had to resign or anything like that because there was an attack at the airport and he's messed this up and blah, blah, blah. And I just sit there and I go, come on. Does anyone buy this shit? That it's genuine? Am I supposed to pretend that you really care about that? By the way, I'm going to say that right now to any listener that's going, I really care about those deaths at the airport and the terrorist attack and Biden should resign. You're full of shit. You care because it fits your politics.
Absolutely.
Because we should have been out of there a long fucking time ago. It's ridiculous it went on this long. And this was going to fuck over any president in office, especially the fact that there was never any plan. There wasn't a plan going in. There was no plan coming out. There was never a good plan coming out after 20 years.
Well, there was a plan. I'm going to take issue with you there, but I want to let Greg.
Maybe no plan is bad, but my point is, I think I never doubted it was going to be a clusterfuck. I never doubted that, no matter who was in charge.
I don't know who said this. I think I heard this on a fortune cookie, or maybe it was a Banksy art, but we get into this habit of letting Republicans control the narrative. I don't know who said that.
I've never heard it before. Great thought. I wish somebody else had come up with that first.
Thanks.
I think it's a Stephen Bishop lyric.
Maybe it's a Stephen Bishop lyric. Maybe I thought of it. But through this whole thing, all I keep thinking is, do we not have a press corps? And what the, and so I keep seeing these 13 beers at restaurants. And I'm thinking,
yeah.
13 beers? What about the other 2,200 people who died, soldiers who died in action? Is it all of a sudden these 13 are special, but over the past 20 years, all those other servicemen, well, we don't have to worry about them? What
about the 125,000 we got out of country?
And that's the other part. These Republicans are brilliant because they're look, we have to get all of our allies, all the people who helped us out immediately. They'll say that on Monday, and then on Tuesday they'll say, we cannot take any of these refugees because we do not want brown people in my district because, well, that's crazy. Wednesday, did we get our interpreters out? They are good people. Thursday, but not here. Maybe somewhere else? Maybe back in Afghanistan? Maybe they could work for them? I hear the Taliban's not... This crazy talk.
Well, the other thing that... The thing that... So many things bothered me about that week of coverage. This idea that a suicide bombing is the fault of a president. In Israel, no country, I think, in modern history has suffered, well, maybe Afghanistan and Iraq now have actually surpassed Israel, but certainly Israel is up there in being the victim of suicide attacks. For the last 30 or 40 years, every month you'd hear about a bus being blown up, a cafe, a wedding, a police station. They never turn on the prime minister after a suicide bombing because they know that there's no defense against a suicide bombing. The people to be angry at are the bombers. It's your enemy. And the idea that in Afghanistan, where police stations were constantly being blown up and wedding parties constantly being attacked, and my God, we've had so many attacks on U.S. interests over the course of the last 20 years. I mean, we don't have to go back to Beirut in 1983 for the barracks bombing. We could talk about the bombing of the 7 CIA agents at Camp Chapman in 2009, I believe it was. I want to also mention Fallujah, by the way, because that happened on Bush's watch. And again, I'm not blaming George Bush. I'm saying it's war. That's what happens in war. Nobody turned on Abraham Lincoln because of Gettysburg. You know, it's war.
Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor. Nobody said, you know, I mean, there probably were some people in 1941 that said Roosevelt was asleep at the wheel, but not predominantly. You know, those were the outcasts. Those were the outliers that said it.
Wait, hold on. Why don't we just talk about 9/11? I heard forever that we couldn't blame Bush for that. I've heard from Republicans forever that wasn't their fault, that no one could have stopped it. They rewarded Bush by reelecting him. They ran on 9/11 as if they had succeeded and
Yes.
as if they had stopped something, despite the fact that it was the major thing that happened in Bush's first term. I've listened for 20 years now, it'll be, in a week, as Republicans have said you can't blame them for what happened on 9/11. 13 people died because of a war that happened because they went into Afghanistan because of 9/11, and we're sitting here hearing that Biden's a fuck-up?
That
Eat
Biden's
my
got
ass.
blood on his hand. Biden's got blood on his hands, they say, and they have the cartoons to show it. And so the idea that people are blaming the end of this war and having a bad day where unfortunately and tragically we did lose 13 good service people, the idea of blaming that on Joe Biden is like blaming Harry Truman for World War II or saying that Gerald Ford should take the heat for Vietnam because he happened to be president during the Saigon airlift. So that's what's been upsetting me.
Well, I mean, let's just say real quick. I mean, let's just be honest. We all know what that is. That is, like I just said, the Republicans don't have anything. They don't have any policies right now. They don't have anything but opposition. Culture, war, nonsense, and opposition. So it becomes anything that we can blame Biden for it, even when it is ridiculous. And call him senile when he's just showing compassion and empathy, right? That's what's going on right now. And for those who may disagree with this, I keep asking, tell me what the Republican policies are, because they have not put forth anything.
No, they'll come up with bullshit. I kept hearing that week, oh, we gave up Bagram Air Base. Oh, that was a giant military fuck up. We gave up Bagram Air Base. Let me tell you something. That would have done nothing. Nothing. Not an iota would that have changed the dynamics in Kabul on the day of that suicide bombing. What about having Bagram Air Base open would have stopped a suicide bomber from walking up to Kabul Air Base? Nothing. In fact, what having 2 air bases would have done was make it twice as difficult and twice as risky to defend against that kind of an attack. That's why they pulled back to 1 air base, because it was harder to defend to.
Now, may I say something that actually surprised me that I learned this week? I'm going to admit, I'd like to pretend I always knew this, but I didn't. It's going to be really interesting and different moving forward with the Taliban back in charge in Afghanistan, because here's something I didn't know. Speaking of no country for old men, what percentage of Afghanistan is under 35? Do you guys know?
Nope.
No.
70.
Wow, young country.
70% of Afghanistan is under 30. Okay? That's a young country. It will be very interesting to see, can the Taliban, I don't know that it can or can't. I don't actually know enough about the power of religious dogma in the Middle East. I mean, obviously I know it's got a lot of power, but I'm just saying, I don't know. I'm curious to see, because that's actually a country full of young people, and the Taliban leaders are not. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen.
They wouldn't stand up to them in the battlefield, so how are they going to stand up to them?
Well, our young people didn't show up to vote for Hillary Clinton, so I mean,
yeah. So the Taliban has been waging war, and waging war is one thing, but running a country is quite a different thing. And now all of a sudden they have people to feed, and they have like infrastructure, and Lord knows how hard infrastructure is.
It's infrastructure week in the Taliban.
It's infrastructure week. There was a report that said when Afghanistan fell, all the government officials like ran and hid in the houses. And then the Taliban supposedly was running down the streets with megaphones saying, look, if you're a government employee, please come back. All is forgiven. We just need people to work in the government. You'll be fine. We will not kill you. And half of them were like, is this a trick to get us to die and kill us? Or do they really do need people to work at their, health department? And many people do believe that they are afraid that they don't know the computer systems or the passwords, and also remember the entire savings, all of Afghanistan's money was held overseas. Do you know where?
No.
U.S. banks. They have no money. And if you don't think COVID is a thing there, it is. They have no vaccines. It was in the middle of one of the hottest summers ever. They have droughts. This is not a good time. I mean, fine, the country is theirs, but they're going to probably not do well. And I say that in the nicest way possible.
Well, they've got challenges ahead of them. But, they said this about Hamas when they took over, and they seem to have hobbled together a government. So.
But I do just want to throw in there, I look up the actual stats, and I'm wrong. It is not 70% of the country is under 35. Nearly 75% of the country is under 25. The average Afghan is 18 years old. Okay? That's a young country. All right? So you're talking about nearly 2/3 of the country is under 25. The average Afghan is 18 years old. And only 55% male. So it will be very interesting to see where things go, because I don't know. With all I know, a younger population in Afghanistan means they'll go backwards, right? I don't know what life is like over there. But
most of them can't even rent cars.
But you also have to think about this. That means that 2/3 of that population over there have only known war. They've never known a time that NATO wasn't in control of their country, essentially. So that could actually mean that they're worse, that they're more radicalized, that they hate Western culture more. I, honest to God, don't know where it's going to go. But when I see a population that young, it tells me that something's going to happen. There's going to be a shift. And I don't know which way, but there's going to be a shift.
Okay. And speaking of shifts, so this is the last topic, and I'm going to make this very quick because we're running long. I just wanted to speak very quickly about the upcoming California recall election, and specifically just want to ask you guys, spitball an opinion. Which way does it go?
Oh, I don't think he's going to get recalled.
Okay, so you think that Newsom will maintain his office? Okay.
I think Newsom will maintain. If you would have asked me this like 6 months ago or 3 months ago, I would have said, maybe. Okay. But at this point, no.
Okay, Ward, what do you think?
I just wish that California would stop always acting like my kids at the goddamn movie theater. You asked for the popcorn, you got the fucking popcorn. At the next movie, you can have the Skittles. All right? You don't get to suddenly give back the popcorn.
But you have to wait for the next movie.
Yes. You don't just suddenly, like 10 minutes into the movie, come to me and say, I want Skittles. Okay? How many times does California do this? For God's sakes.
Well, 2 now.
2 now. Yeah.
Too many.
2011.
And it was too many, although some people happened to like Schwarzenegger as a governor. I didn't think that he was all that effective. But this one, I think I still have a bad feeling that even though the polls seem to be breaking in Newsom's direction, it's about turnout. And I'm afraid that we might get surprised like we did with Brexit and like we did on November 8th, 2016. I'm afraid that turnout might be a bigger factor than people think.
Well, the problem is that Schwarzenegger didn't shit the bed. He may not have done the job that you wish he had done, or he may have done worse than you think.
Oh, he wasn't a terrible governor.
This is what I mean.
He was not a terrible governor. No. Larry Elder would be a terrible, terrible thing to happen to the state of California and to the United States of America. If you folks think Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott are bad, wait till you see Governor Larry Elder. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, but what I think though is that just like people went, I had no idea Trump would be that bad. Well,
that's right.
Schwarzenegger wasn't that bad.
Right.
And so for that reason, people now look at a recall and they go, last time, right? There's that. If Schwarzenegger had shit the bed, then you probably wouldn't be seeing this right now. People would be going, we're not going through that again.
Well, but we are here, and like I said, I mean, I don't know how familiar you guys are with Larry Elder. I don't know how familiar people outside of California are with Larry Elder, but this man was on the radio every day for years on KABC in Los Angeles, and let me tell you, he is bad news to the 10th degree. He said this yesterday, and I hope that this story gets out there. He said he doesn't think it's necessarily a bad idea for white slave owners to get reparations.
What?
From the Civil War. He said that yesterday in an interview. He said that in an interview with Candace Owens. He said, people keep talking about blacks getting reparations. An argument could be made, and I'm paraphrasing now. He said an argument can be made that white slave owners should get reparations because they had their legal property taken from them.
Was he having an aneurysm or something?
No, he was having an elderism.
Oh, that's funnier. Good call.
This guy is a talk radio host. And so he has learned his entire campaign, his entire persona, his entire platform is pandering to right-wing emotions. There's none of what he is about that is based in any kind of logic, policy. There it is again. He's popular now because Republicans only have culture war stuff as their platform. And that's why he's popular, because like Trump, who got all of his tactics from right-wing radio and television, this guy is pandering to that as well.
Yeah, it's the idea is, what is the most contrarian, upsetting thing I can say to get people energized and to upset my opponents? That's what I will say, and that's what I will do.
Yeah, but I literally was talking to someone about this on Facebook. Those guys don't last if you just keep saying that. You look at Andrew Dice Clay, you look at Carlos Mencia, look at Richard Spencer. Richard Spencer is now bankrupt. His wife left him.
Because he went full Nazi. The thing about it though is, Rush Limbaugh had a 30-year career and got the Medal of Honor, Medal of Freedom, whatever it was. He got honored. Okay, this guy is a giraffe's asshole away from the governorship of California. Okay,
yeah, and let me tell you, as bad as Rush Limbaugh was, he was intellectually superior to Larry Elder.
Rush Limbaugh also never wanted to run for office because Rush Limbaugh knew he was full of shit. For those of you that don't know that, Rush Limbaugh was playing you. He knew he was full of shit. But the problem that we have with all this now is that pandering to right-wing and conservative anger is the thing that's working. And so every one of them is doing it. And this guy, that's why he's succeeding.
Well, this was a feel-good episode, wasn't it?
Oh, my gosh.
I think I need another year off after this.
I was going to say, call me in 6 months.
Yeah. We want to thank everybody for listening. Welcome back. If you enjoy what we do here at the More Perfect Union, please follow us on Twitter at MPU Podcast and on Instagram at MPU Fan Club. And don't forget to share our link on your Facebook timeline or copy and paste it into your own timeline and tell your friends to listen and discover us as well. And of course, as always, if you'd like to debate with us between shows, we're all in a Facebook group called Open Fire Politics and Entertainment. You can find us by searching for it on your Facebook browser. And we're there, plus a lot of other smart people who are just waiting to meet and talk politics with you. Guys, it's really fun to be back talking with you again. What do you have on the agenda for your week to come?
Ward and I are going to work on a script this week about a good-hearted man who realizes he could get further in life by playing to right-wing hate, and he starts doing terrible, terrible things on the internet. And eventually there's a moral to the story, and he loses his friends but becomes rich. I think it's something, becomes governor of California.
That's literally a Christmas Carol. You were literally saying the plot to a Christmas Carol.
Shit. We still could write that.
Put a twist on it. Guy wakes up on election eve and realizes, that the three former governors of California come, Gray Davis, Schwarzenegger, and Ronald Reagan. Their ghosts come to him.
Except there's Twitter involved and Snapchat or something like that, or I don't know.
Unfortunately, Ward, between the time that you actually started this pitch, Greg, and just now, Ward's already sold it to Hallmark.
God damn it. He's going to start filming it in 2 months.
It was in a bidding war with Lifetime for a good 10 minutes, too.
At least you're not selling to those dicks at Netflix.